Our next guest is Jim Dew, and I really worked hard at bringing on different types. So a lot of times people think it's one size fits all, that every investment firm, you can walk into any firm and they're whatever your needs are, they're going to say yes to. And so clearly we saw that with Adam and what his niche is: high touch, high service, smaller. So let me read Jim's bio real quick. He's an advisor to the entrepreneur. Jim is the CEO of Dew Wealth Management. Jim has 24 years of experience building virtual family offices for entrepreneurs. He has featured in Inc., Entrepreneur, and the Huffington Post magazines, and is the author of Beyond $1 Million, the Entrepreneur's Playbook for Expanding Wealth, Freedom, and Time. Please help me welcome Jim. Jim, welcome to the summit.
Thank you, Walter. It's great to be here. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you as well. Jim and I have met in another forum. It's give Joe Polish a plug, Genius Network, which is an amazing mastermind. And I just would continue to hear, one, Jim's humor, and two, his ability to sort of recite these details that, and I've been at this for a long time, just was unaware of. And so, Jim is that advisor to the entrepreneur. So Jim, can you just kind of speak to that, your focus and your discipline, and kind of your why? Is that your area?
It is. It's really where I feel most comfortable because I'm an entrepreneur myself. I started as a public school math teacher, did that for 5 years, and decided to do something different. Looked for something that involved numbers because I was a math teacher, and something where I could help people, because that's always been a desire of mine, and fell in love with the financial services. Realized pretty quickly that I didn't fit well into these big companies that kind of dominated the landscape, especially 25 years ago when I started. So I started my own company 21 years ago at the urging of my wonderful wife, Mimi, who Walter knows, who said, hey, you're never going to be congruent with these big companies as far as giving advice to clients. So 21 years ago, we started our own firm as a fiduciary firm, and realized I was an entrepreneur. So we focus on entrepreneurs. We specialize in that area and have done that for a long, long time.
So speak to that. I mean, you are an entrepreneur, as all investment guys are, but there's a specific, talk about the specific, why is an entrepreneur different than somebody that would just walk in that just had a liquidity event? Very
different. So entrepreneurs have the challenge of all the normal planning plus the business. And I can speak as a business owner that those things interweave, they connect, and they are constantly weaving in and out of each other. So you have to have all of those things addressed together. And years ago, I learned about the concept of a family office, which I know you're very familiar with, Walter. I was lucky I got introduced to a billionaire family in New York. I flew out there, spent time with the CEO. And sometimes you just meet someone and you just connect, you just clicked. And we were like that. And he opened up all the processes, the systems, how they would hire the very best tax, legal, insurance, and investment professionals, all as full-time employees working for that one billionaire family. And I was convinced that was the best way to manage wealth for entrepreneurs. There was just one problem. As you know, you need probably about $300 million before you can build your own family office. So I set out to say, hey, could I build a virtual family office, first for my own family and then for my clients who are making more than $1 million a year but are not at that $300 million asset level. And that's what we set out to do, and that's the model that we've continued to tweak over the years.
What do entrepreneurs need to think about when they look at, because it's all about selection. So there's a need, and typically it's a friend of theirs, a golfing buddy. Who do you use? That's a referral from an estate planning CPA. What's the entrepreneur need to really think about in terms of how they go about selecting their team, their financial advisor?
The first thing that I see is most people who call themselves financial advisors, wealth managers, you gave that whole list of the things that people in our industry will call themselves. Most fall into really the investment advisory space, where their core is managing investments, and then all the other planning is secondary to that. And entrepreneurs really need, rather than, so if you picture a wheel, so I call it the financial flat tire when an entrepreneur comes to visit with us. And that's where they've picked up these different professionals over their lifetime. They'll pick up an attorney, an insurance agent, an investment advisor from their golfing buddies, as you said, or from the CPA or the attorney. And when we step in, we find they're not all A players. They're not collaborating. They're not talking to each other for the best results. And the worst part is the entrepreneur is in the middle trying to manage all these relationships when the entrepreneur does not speak the languages of tax, legal, insurance, and investment on a daily basis. So you have to know what you're looking for. I see the investment advisor as a spoke on the wheel. When we step in, we don't necessarily replace that investment advisor. Entrepreneurs can keep that investment advisor, but we work as the family office advisor. So we're going to vet all those different players in the areas of tax, legal, insurance, and investment. We're going to make sure they're all A players, that they're collaborating, and then we put ourselves in the middle to manage those relationships because we do speak those languages on a daily basis.
What are the things that entrepreneurs overlook as they are in a transaction or in a business that you can begin to identify? Because they're like, hey, Jim, I'll just wait. I'll sell my business, and then maybe you and I can have coffee.
I do see that. That is a mistake right there, waiting till they have an exit and they have liquidity. Really, you need to start doing your planning earlier. And there are three outcomes every entrepreneur should be working toward. First is absolute confidence in their team of professionals that are working in those areas I mentioned. Second, maximizing their wealth both inside and outside their company, and that's before and after exit. Often we see entrepreneurs come to us after an exit, and there are all kinds of things they could have done to save on taxes, for asset protection, for transfer planning, that they didn't do because the investment banker and the M&A attorney don't get paid for doing those things. And then the last piece is a plan for sustained wealth. Because entrepreneurs are great at building businesses and making money, but it's a different skill set to manage money and have a plan for sustainable wealth. So those are the three main areas, and those are some of the mistakes that I see is not addressing those areas.
So you guys oftentimes will farm out investment management, but will you do that in-house as well?
We do. So as I've evolved and our team has evolved in our company, I've asked myself one question over and over. If the entrepreneur knew everything I know, how would they build the wealth management structure for themselves? And so one thing I came to a few years ago is I thought, why do we have to manage the money? Why do we, they have to have $1 million or $5 million before we'll work with them, and that's very common in our industry. What about the entrepreneur that just wants to own real estate? What about the entrepreneur that wants to do it themselves or has a great investment advisor that's doing a great job? Why shouldn't we be there to serve those entrepreneurs? So we decoupled from that. When we decoupled, we realized that a lot of entrepreneurs still want us to fill that role, so we dramatically cut our fee schedule. So most advisors are starting at 1 or 1.5%. We're between 30 and 40 basis points. But we make it very clear to our clients that it's optional. They never have to use us for investment management. We're going to run that team and make sure that all the areas of tax, legal, insurance, and investment are being managed in a cohesive way for their benefit.
I know you've done a number of podcasts, and you've been speaking to the entrepreneur, especially in this COVID crisis. What do you tell the entrepreneur in today's landscape?
It's interesting. Often when investment advisors are talking about these times, it's how do you keep people invested through what happened in COVID? And as you commented, I was listening to you earlier, where you mentioned a lot of people sit with cash on the sidelines waiting for the correction, then they're going to put money in. Well, we just had that correction. And how many of you took your millions and threw it in there when the market was down? It's hard. It's very hard while you're going through it. But that's not really what our entrepreneurs came to us for. It's how can we pivot? How can we survive with our company? So ours was more focused on their business. Things like the PPP loan under the CARES Act, which they just passed, the Flexibility Act, which extended the 8 weeks to 24 weeks. At any rate, we were talking about that, about how do they position their companies? How do they create multiple new income streams? How do they position themselves so when we're through COVID and the economy turns back on, that they'll be ahead of the game? How do they survive, hold enough cash, have enough access to liquidity? So those were the conversations we were having much more than the investment piece, because quite frankly, we get paid on a monthly fixed fee, and the investment piece is not our main thing that we do for our clients.
It's a great model. It's unique in that there's separation and accountability to you and the people that stand between the money and yourself. What do you not do?
What do we not do? We don't take clients we don't like. What do we not do? We don't do, so one thing we don't do, and I've had talks with the family offices I know about, this is an advantage we have over them. We do not hire in-house tax, legal, any of those things. So we don't have CPAs in-house, we don't have attorneys in-house. And I tell the family offices that I'm close with, say, if you have to fire one of your attorneys who's an employee, how hard is that? You have an HR issue. Guess what? We don't have any issue. It's easy for us to fire any of the professionals that are working with our clients. And it's also easy for us to have access to all kinds of different specialists to bring in as appropriate. Because sometimes they're not full-time all the time. You might bring in a specialist for asset protection planning, which isn't going to be there at every meeting every year.
How do people engage with you? Describe that process.
We start with something that we call a family office assessment. We have a checklist of 218 things. We look at the 9 areas of wealth management for entrepreneurs under the 3 main categories of protect, manage, and grow. And when we get finished with that assessment, which takes our team about 2 months, we have in all 9 areas, what have they missed? What are the problems? What are the opportunities? And we get really granular into that area. Then we also have a really good idea about how the relationship is going to work, because I call this our dating phase. And I like to say, Mimi and I dated for 3 years. We've been married for 27 years. And that works pretty well. So we like a dating phase with our clients. That's about 2 months for us to decide, should this go further? We charge a flat fee of $10,000 to do that. A lot of that is business consulting. So often the CPAs and tax attorneys are encouraging our clients to write some or all of that off. And then after that, we move into the next phase, which we put them in one of 3 categories, depending on the complexity of their situation and how much work they need from me and my team. And that's a monthly fixed fee, stop anytime.
Now, do you accept if somebody's not an entrepreneur, but they've got a certain degree of wealth, Jim?
No. No, we don't. It's almost like if I went to an orthopedic surgeon and said, hey, would you take my wife, she needs to have a baby delivered. Could you deliver the baby for us? The orthopedic surgeon will say, not really my thing. It also has helped me in my expertise, because if I go to a conference, if I'm looking for continuing education, all I look for is the stuff that applies to small business owners. I don't look for the stuff that applies to other groups of people. And I really believe there's a different set of problems and opportunities for entrepreneurs versus professional athletes versus retirees versus people who inherited their money. Those all have a different set of problems and opportunities, and most people in the wealth management space are generalists. They'll work with anybody who has money, no matter what the minimum is, show up with a minimum, they'll work with you. And I believe in the specialty that entrepreneurs need that we provide.
That's a great way to frame that, and it's really what I'm trying to accomplish here in this session. So as you worked for, and your attitude was shaped by the family office back in New York, what was the thing there that you saw that is now missing? Is it that generalist and that lack of focus? Is it the desire that advisors, like, they'll just take any client of any size just to earn a fee?
You mean, what is the problem with finding the right advisor, or what's the problem for entrepreneurs?
Just that what you found in that family office. You know, when you were there and you were learning and you saw just all the details and complexity of what complex families have to deal with.
Yes, I would say 2 things. One thing that I believe very deeply is that in this country you get rich by being concentrated owning a business. If you look at the statistics, it's something like 95% of people who have more than $20 million net worth owned a business. Now, there are some exceptions to that. There's the other 5%. But if you want to get rich in America, own a business. So you need to be concentrated in a business to get wealthy. However, you need to be diversified to stay wealthy. And I see that, entrepreneurs not understanding those 2 things. And while you're concentrated, you need to start building wealth outside of your company. Our entrepreneurs that had wealth outside of their company, when COVID hit, they weren't worried because they could always tap into some of that money. There are other things they could do. If they've gone far enough, they know the business is optional, that they have enough money over here to turn on an income stream to live and do everything that they want to do. So that's a big mistake that I see, is entrepreneurs not understanding that. The other thing is, I think entrepreneurs don't understand that they really need someone running this team. I've seen entrepreneurs that they have great advisors, they've got a great attorney, they've got a great CPA, but it's not being run in a way that's cohesive. So they need someone to run that. It doesn't have to be me, but a firm that's experienced and specialized to run that team. And that makes all the difference.
How do you deal with conflict amongst the team where there's different motivation with the insurance guy versus the tax guy? Do you run into that?
I do, and I would take those differently. Let's take a tax attorney, for example. We work with a lot of tax attorneys. The tax attorney has an ego, let's be honest. And when I deal with the tax attorney, I want to make sure that the tax attorney, I work that in a way where the tax attorney feels that we're on the same team and I'm complimentary. And by the way, that person is really critical, especially as people have higher and higher income and more taxes to pay. So I create the relationship where I get respect so that then I can earn the right to say, hey, why don't we try this instead of that? The insurance professional is different. The insurance professional I just go to and I'm very upfront. I say, look, we're going to shop you most likely. You have to disclose your commissions and we're going to negotiate the commissions. And if you're not good with that, then you're not on the team. So when it comes to insurance, a lot of people don't know if they need a big life insurance policy, you can actually negotiate hidden commissions on life insurance. Most people don't know that. But you need someone on your team who understands those policies and those products but does not benefit or get any incentives to recommend anything. And that's kind of an interesting balance because usually people are buying financial products from the person that recommended those products who also has an incentive to sell those products, if you see the problem with that.
Yeah, great point. Parting thoughts, Jim. What do you want people to kind of walk away from as a summary of this discussion?
I believe entrepreneurs are the reason for most great things in this country. If you're an entrepreneur, you're the reason for the economy and for jobs and for innovation and even often for giving. And what you have to do is you have to get the right team put together, managed by the right people, so that you actually can create sustainable wealth. Because I meet entrepreneurs all the time who say to me, gosh, Jim, I've made all this money in the last 10 years and I don't have anything to show for it. Please don't be one of those entrepreneurs.
You brought up something, so I gotta toss this last one. You've probably seen people that as their wealth
but have an incentive to work for you at all times and never have an incentive to work against you.
Jim, thank you. Thank you for coming in and joining us. And it's always great to see you. I look forward to seeing you around the hood.
Yeah, good to around the hood. Good to see you all.